Hello, and thank you for joining us this evening. It's a pleasure to have all of you people at home watching with us today and joining us for our very first Insight series online. And tonight, I'm joined with a very special guest, a friend of our institute, a friend of mine, Dana Kerford. Dana is a teacher, a friendship expert, and the founder of You Are Strong, which is a social emotional program for children. After starting her career as a fourth grade teacher in Canada, Dana began to recognize the complexity and intensity of childhood friendships. Motivated to create cultures of kindness in schools, Dana launched her first skills-based friendship program in 2009. Since then, You Are Strong's whole school friendship strategy has been adopted by schools around the world. As the go-to expert on childhood friendships, Dana is regularly interviewed by media including The Today Show, Huffington Post, Sydney Morning Herald, and Canada's daytime talk show, The Social. You Are Strong's groundbreaking approach in empowering kids with friendship skills led to Dana's participation in an exclusive conference on gender equality at the White House in 2016. She's presented at education conferences across North America, Australia, and Asia, and was a key contributor to Snapchat's Global Friendship Report. Dana is a mum, a true teacher at heart, and is currently working on her widely anticipated book. Dana, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's great to see you.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. And thank you to all the parents and educators that are here as well. I think it's pretty awesome that we can all hang out in this way.
Dana, let's dive straight into the questions. But I need to start firstly checking in. How are you at home? You're at home with two kids during social isolation. How are you going?
Oh, yeah. I started out really strong, as I think most parents have in this situation, especially as a teacher. I was fully like, oh, I've got this, no problem. I had my color-coded schedule. I had all my resources lined up. And by day 3, I was like, no, this is not going to work.
This is where we wanted to start this conversation with this misnomer, I reckon. We've talked about this a little bit offline, but the concept of social distancing is exactly what you guys are not doing at the moment. It's much more along the lines of physical distancing and really about social connectedness, bringing people together.
Yeah, and I feel like that was a really good, teachable moment in the importance of language. Language matters, and how we communicate things really matters. And I love that it started out being called social distancing, and people were like, whoa, wait a minute. We are social beings. We need to connect with people. And we still can in this environment. It's about physical distancing. And that just, I felt like, was just kind of the world's lesson on the importance of really using the right language. And that's really important for children as well. I think, for kids to understand that we're helpers, by staying at home. Staying at home is an act of kindness and compassion, and it's a way that we can help, other people. So yeah, I think it's been a really interesting experience, but I do love that it's kind of forced us to get a little more creative about how we connect with people. Yeah. Social connection is like nourishment. We need it to survive. And even if we think about back like babies, babies need to be held to survive and to thrive. And babies who don't have social connection don't do so well. We know that it is something like vitamins and minerals, it's something we need. And just like that, when we think about that connection and the connection to friendship, we've got healthy, positive friendships that fuel us, that give us energy and bring out the best in us and help us learn and grow. And the flip side happens as well, where unhealthy food or that Easter chocolate you've been eating too much of, if we eat too much of it, we don't feel great, and it kind of drags us down. And so those positive interactions, social connections for kids are like fuel. They need that. It's like food. It's like nourishment.
Tell us, what's a tweenager?
Oh, yes.
What is that exactly?
How would you define? So tweens are like 8 to 12. So that pre-adolescent, pre-teen kind of stage where their friendships are now a little more complicated, a little deeper. They're starting to form friendship groups. So, cliques and hierarchies are starting to form in schools. So what I'm hearing from the kids is this real sense of nervousness, I guess, around like what's going to happen to their group, and where, because groups have dissolved right now. And it's a little bit like, I had a girl just 2 days ago or whatever it was, say to me that it felt to her a little bit like summer holidays. When you leave that group, that grade, and you're going into a new grade, and you kind of know things are going to be different with spaces.
Just for those people who are not quite aware of TikTok, Dana, just explain that for us. People like me that are a little bit less social media savvy than yourself.
Okay, well done. I think TikTok is, if I was a teenager again, that would be my go-to one. It used to be called Musical.ly, but essentially it's you put music to action. So, and kids are getting really creative, different dance moves to different songs.
Just give us an example of those dance moves, Dana.
Yeah, so I've got this one, and no, just kidding. I hope you're laughing at home because this is ridiculous. And then teens, who I would say I am most worried about. Friendship for them is survival. They lean on their friends, they support each other through friendship. They've, as you know, moved away from their parents and relying on their parents, and it's about deep connections. The other thing, you mentioned my involvement in Snapchat and their global friendship report. One of the things that they uncovered was that Gen Z, so Gen Z is defined as like 13 to 23 years old, are more likely than any other generation to talk to their friends about mental health issues through social, through Snapchat or TikTok or Instagram or whatever it is, or texting. And so I thought that was really positive, a really positive thing that comes out of social media. I think the other really important thing for parents and teachers to know is that social media, since I'm talking about it, has gotten a really bad rap. Yeah. And parents are really nervous and about their kids being online, and what does this mean? And it's interesting when you start to look at the research, because the majority of friends that kids have online are their friends in person. And so it's actually another way for them to connect. I heard a quote recently that said, the socially rich get richer. Unfortunately, the reverse is true, that the socially poor get poorer. So we do know that children who use social media, who are already lonely, already isolated, or perhaps feel left out, all of those things, when they do go onto social, they leave with negative feelings. But the research shows that the majority, that there's a lot of, that kids typically leave their online experiences feeling positive, which I think is really cool.
There must be a limit, though. I imagine that there must be some, maximum or optimal amount of screen time that's sensible, suitable for children. Can you just tell us a little bit about your views on that?
Yeah, well, I think that my interest, of course, is in relationships and friendships. And a lot of the research on, social media and kids being online is talking about well-being. And as you guys know better than anyone else, as like the experts in the world, well-being is a very broad category. And when they peel back the layers, though, and look specifically at relationships, they're seeing positive outcomes. So, yeah, kids are online a lot. I get it. But I do feel like I'm a big fan, especially right now, of them using it to connect with their friends and deepen those relationships.
And I was listening to a Brene Brown, who I know you're a fan of as well, has a new podcast at the moment. And the first episode of her podcast was about terrible first times, TFT, she spoke about. And we're all in one of those terrible first times, aren't we? We're all rookies at the moment. We're doing something that we've never done before as parents, as students, as children. And her advice, which is exactly what you've been talking about, was three elements particularly, and that is to normalize, to talk about with other adults and with your children, to say that this is okay, this is not normal. It sucks in parts, but it's okay to feel what we're feeling. Then to kind of create perspective around this and to help children with perspective, because as you said, we need to create space, because perspective comes from experience, right? Children don't inherently have perspective. As adults, we have the privilege of life experience that enables perspective. And so I think the conversations you've been talking about, creating space around the dinner table, wherever it is, to allow students to kind of gain that perspective through shared wisdom, is important. And then it's about setting expectations in this terrible first time. So it's the normalizing perspective and then expectations, and just lowering the bar was pretty much, Brene Brown didn't quite use that terminology. And as you know, for those of you who don't know, she's a world-renowned professor from the University of Houston in Texas who studies shame and amongst other negative emotions. But and I think there is a bit of shame involved in this, where parents feel that they should be doing more, or they should be able to keep their kids happy at home, or they should be able to cook the dinner and clean the house and teach the kids math and science and English and juggle all of the other stuff. We kind of end up with, Mark Brackett from Yale calls this kind of meta emotions, like we become kind of guilty or shameful about our anxiety, about our emotions. So I think exactly what you've outlined is so important to help normalize, get perspective, and then set different expectations given where we're at. This is a terrible first. It's hard what we're doing.
I think the other thing that, even with kids, and I kind of alluded to this, like language matters. We know that's important. But using so many kids are visual learners, but using like metaphors and analogies are just really easy ways to talk to kids about how they're feeling. You might want to talk to them about feelings are like waves. We've heard people describe it like that. And when we go to the beach, we feel calm at the beach, despite the fact the waves are rolling in and out. So maybe talking to your child about what they're going through like that as a wave, or maybe snow globes, that you're all shook up inside and that we need to just calm and let the snow settle so that we can see clearly. But, trying to use kind of kid-friendly language when we're talking to them. But I hope it makes parents feel better. Like, I have taught tens of thousands of kids, and I can't teach Reggie and Ruby. Like, I sitting down with them, it's just, home is not school. And I think that's what some of us are trying to do, turn our homes into traditional schools. And we just need to accept that home looks different. And snuggling on the couch and reading your child a story, that's the best teaching that you could possibly do.
Dana, we've got a question that's come through from someone on the Q&A board that I'd love you to have a go at, if you wouldn't mind. And the question is, how can parents help their children who are very self-critical of themselves? Maybe children who use language like, I'm terrible, I can't do this, I'm so stupid. How can parents help those children, particularly maybe given what we're going through at the moment, who are isolated at home? How do we help those children who are particularly self-critical?
Yeah, and that's such a good question. It's so true that some kids, especially in times like this, that's when those issues maybe even start to kind of boil to the top, and they start to really kind of consume them. So your goal as a parent, I think, is to try to tap them into their strengths. Getting them to, it's like the lens in which, looking through rose-colored glasses instead of looking through this negativity lens, which it sounds like they're kind of going with. So getting them to just see things a little bit differently, trying to tap them into their strengths. The other thing I'll say is that I think even just being compassionate and empathetic, and maybe sharing a time when you didn't feel good about yourself either. Because I think we've all felt that, where we felt down on ourselves. That's another strategy you can use is, and which I've used with kids, where I describe a child and maybe even a friend of theirs. So that always helps. A friend of theirs, and then you describe the same behaviors that you're seeing in your own child. So you'd say, you know what? I've got this there's this kid, and his name is Charlie, and Charlie's really he's been down on himself. What advice would you give Charlie? Getting that child to just, Dr. Susan David talks about, widening the lens, and you mentioned perspective earlier, David, but that's just getting them outside of themselves to look at themselves through a different lens.
Outside of the work you're doing, what have you seen really top schools doing, or some really good strategies schools using to help keep teenagers connected to their friends?
Yeah, so some of the best examples that I'm seeing is schools getting them to work together on a project somehow. I mean, there's so many things that they can do together kind of online where they're, connecting, they're still working together on a project, but they're just not, physically together. So, I mean, there's lots of things they can do. The other thing too, and this was mentioned in the Lisa Demore article in the New York Times, but getting them to plan something that they can look forward to in the future with their friends. I thought that was such a good idea, because it also reminds them that this isn't forever, that we will have a new normal, new normal where we can actually be together again. And so having them to kind of have something to look forward to, planning, maybe a little party or something at school, like what could you be planning and get the kids involved in for the, post coronavirus experience.
Dana, you mentioned the You Are Strong classroom. Tell us a bit about that, because I had the privilege of being a student in your classroom with, I think about a week ago, 160 kind of 8, 9, 10-year-olds, and I was some 40-year-old guy. So I was sort of sitting and observing this amazing experience of a virtual world, global classroom that for a secondary senior trained teacher like me feels like almost my worst nightmare, having all these kids. But it was an incredible experience. Just tell us a little bit more about what You Are Strong is doing to help kids keep kids connected during this experience, and particularly around the classrooms you're running.
I think that, thank you for coming to that, by the way. It was so much fun. When this all happened, my biggest concern was around, obviously, friendships, that I know that friends are the most important thing to kids, being with their friends, and then, of course, what the science tells us on the impact it has on their well-being. And so the You Are Strong classroom, I just started doing these sessions. So I just, kids sign up, they register, and I run a 30-minute session. And then we play Pictionary at the end. We also sometimes have dance parties, because you know me. But yeah, in the last 5 weeks, I have worked with over 3,000 kids. It's been unbelievable. I've had some kids who've come to every single session, and I'm not joking. I feel connected to them. I know them now. I'm getting to know them. They know me. And they are starting to kind of know each other. And so, it's about having fun, because I think that's really important. It's about friendship skills, because that's really important as well. But it really is about belonging. And I say at the beginning of our sessions every time, everybody's welcome in this classroom, and you're all welcome here. And it's a place for us to kind of, be together.
Dana, thank you so much. Thank you for keeping kids connected. Thank you for all the work that You Are Strong's doing to help support students and teachers and parents at the moment. And particularly, thank you for joining us tonight. It's lovely to connect with you and to hear about how you're supporting so many people and contributing during this challenging time. It's been an absolute privilege and pleasure to have you for an hour tonight. Thank you also to everybody who's logged on at home. It's been so nice to have a whole range of people from all over Australia, and a few international people as well. We hope to see you next time. In our next installment of the Insight series, we have Matthew Johnston, a renowned author, illustrator, former creative director of the Black Dogs, and Matthew will be joining us next time. But Dana, thank you so much. It's awesome to see you again, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you, and a big thank you to all the parents and teachers that are here. You guys are amazing. You are my heroes. So thanks. Keep doing what you're doing. And thanks to you.
Thanks, Dana. Talk to you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.